We all think about other things, and at the end of the day, we're all trying to make the world a little bit better for ourselves or for our family or for our communities, and we're just really fortunate.
Just a quick reminder for you to like, subscribe, and rate this podcast so we can get your feedback and know how to make it better. Hey, it's Ari. Welcome to another episode of the Made in America podcast. Today we have Marcia LaFemina, President and CEO of Penn Globe. Marcia, thank you so much for coming on today.
Thanks for having me, Ari.
Well, it's literally my pleasure, Marcia. It's a Made in America podcast, so we start off with the same two questions. What do you make and why do you make it?
Well, we make energy efficient, sustainable outdoor lighting fixtures with personality and purpose. And why we make it is simply because lighting is important to everybody, everywhere, not just for safety, but for a sense of place and sense of community.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. Anyone who's been around like those new streetscapes and sees when they put in the new lighting and like what a difference it makes. You're literally in the same place, but you're like in your mind and your feelings like transported to somewhere like nicer and warmer and more engaging, I think.
Yep, comfortable.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we got a lot to talk about today, Marcia, a lot about, creative new work weeks, DEI, women in manufacturing, time outside of the business, innovation, so much to do, all that. But before we get to all that, I'd like to kind of get into a little bit of the personal stuff, which is what brought you into manufacturing? Did you always know you were going to be in this?
No.
Well, get us the story.
I was going to be an art teacher.
An art teacher.
That was the plan. The theory about kids and disabilities and introducing art into their worlds. But my father owned the business, and so I did drawings. Back then, we did drawings. We didn't have CAD, and so I did summer drawings and whatnot with him. And one thing led to another, and not an uncommon story. Done everything from emptying the trash cans to assembly lines when we had like big jobs, and a little before you know it, you like what you're doing. And manufacturing is creative, so it worked for me. It's worked for me for a long time. What
was sort of driving you to do? It sounds like you're trying to use art to help reach people. You're saying disabilities and art.
Yeah.
What drove you to that? Like why was that something on your mind?
Well, I don't think I was a proficient artist, and that I was good enough. But I know it spoke to me, and I think I've always been looking for the alternative way to get somewhere that still has you going swimming downstream, because I don't want to swim upstream, but a different way to think outside of the box to be able to make a difference.
Did you go to art school?
No, it was my major.
Okay.
But I did not go to art school. I actually did get accepted to Philadelphia College of Art, which was amazing, but it was a different time in life and I didn't go.
You didn't go. Do you see that what you were doing in the art and the part of your brain that you used for that has been helpful in manufacturing? Because I think there's, I've actually been doing a bunch of reading, sort of that, business and even a lot of education focus on STEM has really focused. I can never remember if it's the right side or the left side of the brain, but
right.
It's the right side. So there's been a lot of focus on that one side of the brain that's super logical and numbers and data driven, and that in some ways we're missing a little bit of that creativity. Have you found that creative side that you appreciate in art has been helpful in business?
100%. 100%. Our offices, or mine and another, in the conference room space, we're lined with chalkboards. Painted chalkboards, and we draw on the boards, and we have ideas on the boards, and people bring us an issue, and can we do something? And I think we're creative all the time. How we solve problems, how we fix things. I'm happy to say that when we make a mistake, we don't make it again.
Right.
Because we think it through and we draw it through. And so I'm, as much as I can be, I'm an advocate for the whole concept of STEAM versus STEM, because I do believe that the arts are important to all of that. Nobody wants to be a robot. Yeah. Everybody's creative, and whatever it is they do, everybody is creative in some level. I just happen to be able to draw.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I think bringing that to bear, you're so right. I mean, that the kind of the adding of the art into the STEM, the STEAM, I think has made such a big, can make such a big impact and such a big difference if we embrace it. That's really cool. I want to get into some details of today and tomorrow of the business, what you're doing. But the business has been around for a long time. I mean, we're coming up on like 150 years here in just a few years.
Sounds right.
Yeah, 1877, I think.
Yeah, not under continuous ownership, but it is a legacy to be proud of. Everything we make if it's got a casting, is made out of a sand casting. And all those castings, many of them still go back. The tooling goes back. I mean, one on our trademark fixtures, the Boulevard, and right in the fitter cast, it says patent date 1877, which obviously is long since expired.
Right.
So a lot of what we do is not necessarily, it's not assembly line work.
Right.
It's not assembly work. It's, even though we don't own our own foundries or anything like that. So I guess, the history of it was on the East Coast, heavy East Coast presence, jump over, heavy West Coast presence, and a lot of towns in California, all along the Pacific Highway, and spaces in between. The entire city of St. Louis was gas lights and these fixtures and
all made by the predecessor of Penn Globe.
Detroit. I mean, and some of them that we've made. And my father, to his credit, what he did is he took this gaslight company and developed an HID, high pressure sodium, metal halide, versions of those same fixtures and turned them into performance fixtures, not just attractive gas lights. At nighttime, they actually really super performed.
Right.
And so it's
when was your dad get involved in the business?
He worked for the business when we lived in Baltimore. So back in the 70s.
Okay.
Back in the 70s, some point.
And
he wound up buying the company.
So how did it get from Baltimore to
Because he didn't own it then.
Branford?
Because he didn't own it then.
Okay.
And different people moved it.
They did.
And so therefore we wound up in Connecticut.
So you were just moved up to Connecticut when they moved the company up here. And when he started in the 70s, it was still doing gas lights?
Oh, we still do gas lights.
Really?
I know. Hard to believe, right?
Like what is it, natural gas piped into the street? Where does the gas come from?
Yeah. So, I mean, we have everything from places, like the fixtures at Disney on Main Street, USA. They think they still run those as gas.
So it's like a little flame in there?
Yeah. Or the little sock thing. It's called a mantle. It's like a little sock. Runs through that way, too. But places like the Bucks County Playhouse, and, they did their whole thing in gas just a couple of years ago.
No kidding.
Yeah, and there's cities and towns that still have them. I mean, they're not lighting their streets with them anymore. They're that personality and that place and that sense of community. And really, God forbid you want to take down the historic light fixtures, a town will come up in arms.
Right.
Right? Because they identify with that.
Sure.
Right? It's a lot of logos in cities and towns, for instance, have their light fixtures.
That's so true.
It's true. You'll see it.
Yeah.
Like once you see it, you can't unsee it.
Yeah. That's very true. And so your dad kind of went into the HID, the gas lights. So anyone remembers those lights, so they like explode when you pop. And so where's the company gone from there in terms of changing and innovating to meet sort of today's needs?
The market moved to LEDs around 2010. I want to say about 2010. I was really concerned. I speak for the company then. That was a really new technology that wasn't proven, and we wanted people to be energy efficient. So we went there, but we went there properly and cautiously to make sure that products that said that they were going to be warranted, because the big sell was not just the energy efficiency, but the length of time. It would be 10-year warranties on the performance, and they've only been around for like a minute. You want to make sure that it's going to be so. Around 2010, we pretty much did what my dad did with HIDs and took the same fixtures and said, all right, now we have to turn them into the best performing versions of themselves, but still have them somehow, when it needed to be in a historic community, to look quaint and comfortable, and people weren't uncomfortable looking right up into them.
Right. Yeah. I mean, the first knock on LEDs was like they had this very white, I think is how you would say, this very white, bright light. Not.
Yeah, you don't need a lighting education, but it's called color temperature.
Okay.
And so there was a standard of 4,000K that people said was outdoor. That was the outdoor standard. It doesn't work for historic communities. It's not as bad as gas station color renderings of even higher Kelvin temperature. But you needed to go down to the warmer ones. And that's where we shine. There's no question about it. We shine over there.
And so you essentially took the newer technology to take advantage of the longer lifespan, the energy efficiencies, but found a way to retrofit it into the old thing so you could get sort of the temperature and the feel of the old lighting and the look of it, but still get advantage of the new stuff?
And we do this for other people's light fixtures. doesn't just have to be ours because we know how to do this. And so we've got this amazing program where a little bit of self, promoting out
That's
there.
where I get after it.
We have this amazing program that where we can do an entire campus or an entire town in the course of a couple of weeks by giving them loaner fixtures. And every week we go in, we take the original fixtures, we go pick them up, we bring them back, strip them down, we repaint them, we relens them. We basically give them a complete 5-year warranty on their existing fixtures, and they come back fresh and new. And their electric departments that do not have the bandwidth or the money or 2 people on the ladder up and down, and so we can do it really economically at a fixed cost. Before I bore you to tears with this, but
please.
It's a controlled cost, and the same product winds up going back and really being reused. And it comes out of a different budget. It doesn't come out of a capital budget. It comes out of a maintenance budget,
right.
Which is easier for them. And so we last summer we did the Harvard Business School campus. We've done entire cities. We've done the Seton Hall campus. I mean, I can
go on and on.
Going.
And so the idea is they've got the classic fixture look, but they're still using the HID lighting.
Yep.
And do you see people kind of going from, I don't know, when I think of a lot of sometimes street lights, that like what I think of as like the 70s or 80s, pretty lame looking metal pole. Do you see people sort of switching those out as well? Because that's what I'm seeing on streetscapes in towns and cities. Yeah,
definitely. So, but in our space right now, a lot of the stuff is made in China.
Yeah.
They're lookalikes to what it is that we do. They're made out of die castings. I'm not saying they're better or they're worse, but I'll just give you the Yukon as an example. A couple of years ago, we were fortunate enough to get the Yukon work. And to me, that was like the absolute best example of how these things should be. Connecticut University, Connecticut taxpayer dollars, Connecticut manufacturer who is committed to purchasing locally from Connecticut manufacturers themselves for the subcomponents, wherever you could. I mean, it was the model of like, this is awesome.
Yeah.
You can't do that when, somebody is supplying a fixture that, as I say, is made in China. It might look the same, but it's not. And it's not giving people jobs and a standard of living. And so we have to stay competitive.
Yeah, of course.
In that space. And I think we do a reasonable job of that. And that's why we'll move forward.
That's great. So what's next? So we've gone from gas lamps to HID to LED. What's next?
Well, furthering the whole sustainability and the whole made in America, what we can do. I mean, lighting manufacturers are working at a disadvantage because we really can't say made in America because too much percentage of our product, because they're LEDs and they're only made in China.
LEDs are only made in China?
Only made in China. You can buy them here. But that wouldn't be honest now, would it, if you know that it's actually coming from somewhere else. But we might get there, But looking for the other sustainable ways, we're exploring how we can make certain products of a much more modern style in our repertoire.
Most of your stuff's pretty classical.
The majority of it is, but it's not to say exclusively it is. I mean, we have whole pages of more modern fixtures. Mm-hmm. But to be able to take some of those designs and make them out of recycled materials will be hopefully our next step, and have it done here in Connecticut. I'll give a little shout out here to CCAT and say that they've been a huge asset in helping us get there and aligning us with manufacturers who might be able to help us out in that space.
What have you been doing with CCAT to help?
Well, brought the idea to them and sent them some drawings and got some working 3D models from them, full-size 3D models that have helped us, look forward at how to break down the tooling when we're talking to the injection molders of how we can make this thing structurally sound. And that model helps a lot.
Yeah, nice to have somebody in your backyard to help kind of make that.
They're amazing.
Yeah. What about any other like high-tech additions or, what sort of...
Well, the Penn Smart, and I don't know if you're...
Penn Smart?
Penn Smart. We started that back in, literally the month after Sandy Hook, before the chalkboards were painted on the walls. I could talk a lot about this, but I will tell you how we got here because I think it's important.
Yeah.
If you saw the news, you might have seen that the gentleman who was at Sandy Hook was there the day before. He was on campus the day before, which is why the principal knew to run from behind the counter and meet him in the lobby. And I was watching a film clip, and I saw that there's a driveway. There's a driveway to the school, and I think I saw pillars is what I saw. And I said, if they had had cameras down at the bottom of that driveway and were feeding into the principal's office, the main office, since he'd been there the day before, they would have had an opportunity to meet him outside. He may never have made it into the building. And the next day I walked in and talked to our people and said, I think we can do something. I said, we can hide cameras in light fixtures. And we could, something like that could have been there and been the transmit. Not that a regular camera couldn't do it, don't get me wrong, but that was where it came from. So we started playing around with it with commercial cameras and what we could do with that, and then moved on to, a couple months later was the Boston Marathon shooting, and that's when we knew we were absolutely on the right track. Because at that time, all the cameras were on the top of the buildings. You saw the footage; they were seeing the tops of people's heads, and we saw what was getting in the way were the trees, and I realized that there has to be real-time security can be achieved discreetly in streetlights if it's under the trees and you can get real-time facial recognition. And then it just kind of went with, we're part of the Global Cities Team Challenge with NIST, and we get an IES award because this is a new product innovation.
IES?
International Illuminating Engineering Society, which is the lighting, and they weren't thinking about this kind of stuff. They're thinking about lighting.
Right.
But this got us all into the space of, as we like to say, and more people are saying it now, using existing real estate, because everybody's got streetlights.
Sure.
So then it turned to, can you retrofit these streetlights? Can the whole idea, and can they keep on doing this?
Plus the light, you've already got the pole,
Right.
You've already got the electricity,
And they're working just fine. Everything's working just fine.
Correct.
So how do you turn this into a plug and play? And then it turned into, well, can you do license plate readers? Well, we can do a camera, we can do a license plate reader. I'm not going to make these things. I'm not making cameras. I'm not making license plate readers or, counters for cars, for traffic. The mind boggles when you think what people want to do.
Just embracing the whole Internet of Things, yeah.
So, and it's gone from there to probably the biggest opportunity for us is to really let the existing real estate stay the way that it is. And we patented this, I call it a pod, we call it a terrace. On a street light, there's a tenon on everybody's pole. The fixture slides over, there's a pole, there's a tenon, and the fixture slides over. It's got a standard diameter, usually 2 5/8 inch OD. So if you bought a pole from me and a light fixture from somebody else, that light fixture would fit on there.
Gotcha.
So that was the universal part. So the idea was to create a pod where you could remove the light fixture, drop the pod, have it populated with the technology, and drop the fixture right back on again.
No kidding.
Yeah. It's a good thing.
That is a good thing.
It's a really good thing. So cameras, Wi-Fi, a lot of the components when we began this were too big. Wi-Fi modules in particular, they were like, honking massive.
Yeah.
But as the size and the scale are coming, smaller. And the thing of it is that in our company, I'm not going to recreate the wheel. I don't make LEDs. I buy the right LEDs to get your street what you need that will work in our fixture or whatever.
Right.
Same thing with cameras, same thing with any of the other technology items we want to introduce. It's just a question of what do you want? And we'll find it, and we've got the vehicle to populate it.
Wow. So, look, so the makes so much sense, right? Because in order for the light to work, it has to have no blockage to the area you're trying to light up. So you put the camera in there, and if you get the camera in the right spot, the light's lighting up what you're looking at. So it's sort of like no brainer. And then if you can get Wi-Fi in it, you could, in theory, if you're at a school, you could maybe even put Wi-Fi across your campus using existing.
That was exactly the first pilot we ever did was for Columbia University.
Yeah, so you don't have to then figure out what building do I put it on.
And we're learning as we go. We're learning as we go. We're a little teeny company, and in all honesty, I don't have the resources to market our availability the way that I would like to, but hopefully it's coming.
Yeah. Have you heard of the internet? You could use that to market.
Really?
Yeah, it's amazing.
Thanks.
This thing. Well, offline, we'll go all about it.
Yeah,
Great. Well, that's really cool. It's just, I think it's really impressive, honestly, Marcia, because when you in order for any company to survive, they've got to innovate. And the longer you've been around, the more you're going to have to innovate. And I just think this, just really exciting to see how much you guys have done over such a long period of time, and how much innovation you've done just in the last 20 years. It's pretty cool.
You think a lot. We all do, right? We all think about other things. And at the end of the day, we're all trying to make the world a little bit better for ourselves or for our family or for our communities. And we're just really fortunate. Sometimes there was a time when I was, we're small. Like we're like a gnat, okay, in the lighting business. But that's like turned into like our strength.
Sure.
Because we are small, we can grow as we need to be. And I can do a town of 30 lights and make money and make people happy. And I say I'm speaking holistically for the whole company. Yeah. But, we can turn that into, we don't have to be chasing, the 2,000 light fixtures that are down the San Diego freeway.
Right.
Which is another way to go about it, but I can't compete there. But we can make a real difference where we are.
So you mentioned, you're talking about making a difference. You talked about sustainability already a few different times. Like, talk to me about that. Where did this drive for sustainability come from? How do you think about it in your business? How do you leverage sustainability and be profitable? I mean, so much to talk about.
Well, if you're talking sustainability insofar as the LEDs, you have no choice but to go there. I mean, the world is there. That's the expectation. It's how do you improve upon that and have it be a bigger conversation, recycled materials. I mean, I was shocked to learn about recycled plastics. I mean, you may know that there's different grades of recycled plastics, but they think they go from 1 to 8. And only 7 and 8, we put all of our recycled material in, only 7 and 8 ever get recycled. The rest of it
That's the number inside the little triangle?
It's a number. It's like one.
Yeah. So anything that's not 7 or 8, what do they do with it?
They chop it up and they put it in landfills.
Okay.
So at the end of the day, there's a resource that's not doing our planet any good.
Right.
So the whole thing's like going after this recycled product. I'm not going to do what everybody else is doing. I'm going to try and make some use and some value. And, I think that this way for our little company is going to outsurvive me. I think this is now part of who we are. And we didn't have to hire a professional to get us there, to get us all on the same page. I think there's just been buy-in. And we'll just keep looking for ways we can be impactful.
Is there something that has opened your eyes to sustainability? Is it just always been in you? Or just, you seem really passionate about it. I just didn't know if there's something behind it.
No more than anybody else about caring about the world. It's a little frightening out there right now. So whatever it is we can do to, mitigate the...
Just trying to leave it a little bit better than you found it.
A little bit. What else can you do?
That's right. Well, if everybody does a little bit,
who knows, right?
Things can happen. Well, thinking about innovation, it isn't just about sustainability. It isn't just about LEDs and IoT and smart lighting. You've also been doing some really interesting stuff with like the work week and workforce. And I wonder if maybe you could share that with the audience. Because, I mean, you've been experimenting with a 25-hour work week for certain employees. And I think it's pretty wild.
Well, probably got there because we did the 410s back in the last energy crisis when I felt horrible that people were driving, and spending all that money for gas to get to us.
We should explain what 410s means. I don't know if
I'm going to go there.
Okay.
4 10-hour days.
Right.
And everyone loved it. Every Friday was off. It was a win-win for everybody, and there was an extra day's worth of commuting not coming out of their pocketbooks. It was not sustainable after 2 years. I mean, people were tired on Thursdays. I mean, 4 10-hour days is still a lot of days. And they were tired, and I could see that. So we compromised on half a day on Friday. So went to a different thing and got our 40 hours for 9-hour days, and then then the 4 hours on Friday. And we used Fridays, since it was a half day, we used that to better ourselves. It's a whole other long story. To better ourselves. They were education days, and everybody was responsible. It was their turn.
So all the production was being done in the 36 hours, and then the 4 hours
and
was...
the 4 hours
was like continuous improvement, educational stuff.
Yeah.
That's
and
interesting.
that's what we did. And so some people brought in film clips from the biography channel of Tesla versus Edison. My foreman did the life of a casting. He put it in a shopping cart and wheeled it around the shop with video. It goes to welding. It goes here. It goes this. People who were interested. My sister is a huge dark sky advocate forever, since Connecticut was the leader in dark sky.
I don't know what that is.
Light pollution.
Okay.
So, she educated people on that. It was great. It was good stuff. It was really, really good stuff.
That is good stuff.
So then earlier this year, we changed everything to make it more fair. So we all now work 36 hours a week.
So we dropped the Friday altogether.
No, we still work Friday.
Okay.
8-hour days.
Okay.
So we're working 36 hours.
Okay.
All right. And I want to say, I don't pay overtime. We get the job done. I haven't paid overtime. I haven't paid overtime in like forever.
Okay.
So I know this works, right? So the 25-hour work week, the experiment was particularly, and I don't mean to be sexist, but it's hard not to talk about it without talking about women just being moms.
Let's call it
but
like
I
it is,
recognize their
Marcia.
parents.
Yeah.
I recognize their parents, and there's,
Yeah.
but the more I saw about this 9 to 2 window, because everybody in workforce is worried about, no matter what programs they have, it'll come back to transportation and childcare as being the obstacles.
And 9 to 2 being sort of like the window where once your kids start school, they're all off and out by 8:30 or whatever, but they're home by like 2:30, 3 o'clock. So theoretically, between getting to and from, you've got 9 to 2,
Right.
where you could do something.
So these are 5-hour days.
Yeah.
9 to 2. That lets a mom put her child on the bus, come to work, be there to meet the bus, do the homework, do the dinner, have a real life, go to bed at a normal time, not be at Dunkin' Donuts, which I like to say because, at 2 o'clock in the morning, there are moms who are working at that time because that's when they can work. It's part-time, it's service work, it's low-paying work, it's not family-driven, and therefore it can't be really, in my view, it can't be really satisfying. It gets the job done.
Right, right.
Whatever your job is. But, if you take out that if a person could afford the daycare, they probably can't find it.
Right.
Right? So if you take out that whole thing, where it fits, and it doesn't fit everywhere, and I recognize that, but it does work in a lot of manufacturing spaces. And I think that as manufacturers are complaining, I also, I'm on our RSP, I'm one of the co-chairs of our RSP down at the South Central RSP.
Probably should say what an RSP is.
Oh, Regional Sector Partnership,
There you
which
go.
is our brand new, so to speak, collaboratives regionally for the manufacturing communities to come together to try to solve their issues and grow their manufacturing strength.
With a huge focus on workforce, I would say, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, RSPs are all about the workforce, so there's various regions. Of the
Well, there's
state.
cost, there's other things, and of course the promotion, but that's another whole conversation.
Right.
Right. So, listening to all of this and people saying that they're willing to be flexible, and I think this is an answer. I think this is an answer where it's an answer. And as fate would have it, there was a story on CNN about Kawasaki doing this. And I picked up the phone, I called them, and talked to the guy, and brought him in to manufacture CT as a guest
Seriously?
speaker. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Oh, you don't even know. You don't even know. I mean, all anybody can do is say no.
Listen,
right?
sometimes just about having some chutzpah, just got to make it happen.
So I asked the young lady who works with me, I said, can you find the phone number for this guy? And we called him, and he talked to us, and he told us how wildly successful it's been. And they don't let anybody who's worked 40 hours go to 25.
Okay.
But 25, if you can make it work for 40, they'll happily take you
Gotcha.
up there. So it doesn't work across the board. Question to him, are other manufacturers in your area now following suit? Yes. And that would be my hope.
That people see it and understand the value.
So that's, I think, it's a good answer. It's not an end all. There is no silver bullet.
Yeah.
But if you were left with pulling women in particular, forget pandemic. This is, we have what did Bill say last night at our thing? 3.1% unemployment in this
Yes.
state.
Yeah.
Well, those women have not worked. They're not being counted.
Right.
Those immigrants that we have in New Haven County, of which there are hundreds, right? They're not being counted. They were not employed. Now they're suddenly unemployed. They're
Right.
just there, available. I talked to the folks at IRIS, the refugee service company that has all that. I talked to them about the 25-hour work week. What it go. Come to find out, those women, they won't put their kids in daycare. They'll send them to school. They won't put them in daycare.
Right.
So he was like, with the jobs that could be filled by these same moms from the refugee community. I mean, it's available talent pool. And we would be silly not to have the win-win, especially as inflation is growing
Yeah.
and housing is getting harder and harder for people to afford. If a person can take home, you would think somewhere in the neighborhood of $1,500 to $2,000 a month take home.
Right.
That's a lifestyle changer.
Oh yeah.
Keeps you where you are.
And even if you did daycare, if you just worked the extra 15 hours, you're going to spend probably all of that or most of it on the daycare to begin with. So you're going to be working all that extra time, not be around your family just to pay someone else to do it.
Exactly.
And this gives you an opportunity to sort of have the best of both worlds.
So that leaves us with the transportation component, which I really think with a little bit of time with the Amazon people and figuring out how to, handle the critical last mile, we can get there. I don't think this is brain surgery. I think we can get there.
So have you been experimenting yourself with the 25-hour work week with the folks?
I did. Started in January.
And
the young lady we brought in, she shortly thereafter said, "I think I can make 40 hours work."
So she upgraded.
It did. But it proved the point. I mean, I told her straight up what we were trying to do. She's a mom, young child,
Right.
An infant. In her case, but she had a mom who was going to be able to work, and what it did, and she was home to be able to relieve her mom. It kind of worked in reverse, but it still worked.
Right.
It still worked.
Well, listen, even if the 25-hour work week only becomes a feeder for someone who ends up taking 40 hours, that's not a bad outcome
Not
either.
at all.
Yeah, so you're
Right.
sort of getting the
numbers in that we're just not counting.
Wow.
So why do we want to leave them on the table?
Yeah, listen, I mentioned to you earlier that I was sort of preparing for this. I've been, obviously in my lifetime, the 40-hour work week's the only thing I've ever heard of. I thought it had been around forever. I didn't realize that it sort of only been around for 100 years since maybe, Henry Ford sort of experimented with it, and he did it to sort of conquer a low unemployment, hard to find good labor. So he increased pay and changed the work week to try and attract people. And then it became sort of law in 1940, the 40-hour work week. So, I mean, it's been only 80 years.
But then again, it's been 80 years.
Right. Yeah. But I mean,
so it's like the flip side.
Yeah. I mean, look, but it was a quote innovation in its time to meet a certain need. And I just think it's talking about what you meant before about thinking outside the box. I think sometimes we're just so trapped in what we have. We have a hard time stepping back and saying, hey, we don't have to be locked into this older, thing that's there. It was created for a reason in 1940 and before that. We can reinvent something now. That's cool.
It's kind of like a meet the moment. In 1940, it met that moment. 80 years later, there might be a different
moment.
Yeah.
And I think what you've sort of shown in this conversation too about this and a lot of other stuff is, there doesn't have to be a one size fits all. It doesn't mean your company can only be 40 hours or only be 25 hours or only be 36. There's opportunities to sort of experiment and try something. And we're not committed. You tried 4 10s, didn't work. 4 9s and a 4, right? You just keep moving it around to meet what your needs are, and you're getting to somewhere pretty creative. I think that's pretty cool.
Well, you get a chance to, share it, share a little bit about what you're doing in spaces. And then I find that after you start having this like little nugget of a conversation, other people were thinking the same things. It's all common sense.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not like I'm really nothing special. I just happen to be able to see beginnings and middles and ends. I tell people all the time, that's all I can see is beginning and middle and end. So, changing up the middle is all we're doing. And people see that. I mean, it really doesn't matter with this 25-hour week. I mean, it will address a DEI initiative. There's no question. It'll serve our communities, our urban communities, very, very well, and I'm excited about that. But there's not a mom on this earth, in this country that hasn't had to deal with, my kids are going to school, what am I going to do? I have daycare. It's a universal issue.
Yeah, there's just no question about that.
So.
And mom guilt and all that's a real thing.
It's real.
Yeah, and there's no doubt. So, I mean, you mentioned manufacturer CT. So for people that don't know, that's a trade group sort of based around in the New Haven area, but it's statewide. And you're putting time on the board with all the stuff you got to do with the
I
business.
run the workforce committee.
Okay.
So that's been.
Why did you decide to put your hand?
They asked me.
Okay.
So I said I would do it as long as, and I say that about everywhere I am. I'm all evidence to the contrary because clearly I have no problem talking. I don't want to be a talking head. I want to be able to roll up my sleeves and do things. And I said as long as I can do that, I'll sit on this board or I'll do something as long as we're making a difference. I think that Manufacturer CT, which was the New Haven Manufacturers Association, but changed its name so that we could be more of a statewide presence and something important. And I think that we have done things. I think we've given, while I've been trying to do this, some different thoughts. It was no problem calling the people at Kawasaki. I laughed because I shouldn't even do it, but I listened to Mayor Pete, who's the Secretary of Transportation under this administration, talking on the radio one day about how this infrastructure bill, prior to its passing, was lobbying, was going to be great for manufacturers. And really? So I picked up the phone and I called down to there and said, I need somebody from your department to come and talk to manufacturers CT and tell us how this manufacturing, how it's going to be great for manufacturers. And I don't say these things to be braggy. I say it because, just like get to the chase and let's get some things for us all to
Did they send someone?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I love it.
I did it again for the Made in America. What does that mean for us? How does that help us? What do we do? I called down the executive director, the Made in America office at the White House. It's a brand new thing. The director came and talked to us. I mean, I think, trying to get people answers, think about it is my role. How does that interface with the workforce? Anyway, I'm not exactly sure how that answers your question.
That's all right. Well,
but the thing of it is
it seems like you've had a lot of effort in workforce. You're on the Board of Workforce Alliance. You're doing the Workforce Manufacturer CT. You're experimenting. What's driving that? Why?
I can only say because it matters, and because I will say this, and I've said this to my family and the people I work with. I think because I know a little bit about a lot of things, because of where I've been, because I've been in manufacturer CT, and I see what they're trying to do, and I see what the Workforce Alliance is trying to do, and I am a manufacturer, and I can keep on going. I go here and I said, maybe my job is to try to pull together the best that everybody has to offer in our little corner of the world, and you bring what you do, and I bring what I do, because I know what you do. And, there's, with all the best of intentions, I'm going to say this, there are so many people coming late to the manufacturing workforce. They're all trying to do like new initiatives and a new thing and another new website and another new, you know what I'm saying? I
sure do.
And it's all from the right place.
Yeah.
But since I have been doing this for a little while, it's an opportunity. And so, we're going to bring a training center to New Haven and put our stuff behind what we're trying to do, and it's going to work because of all of that. I'll bring what I do. You know what I mean? I know a little bit about how the workforce board works, and I know about hiring ex-offenders, and I've been down in the Whaley Avenue prison interviewing these guys for months after months after months and giving them skills and stuff. I know a little bit about all of this stuff, and so I know who to reach out to, and we'll just bring everybody together.
Listen, one of the things that I think people are going to take away from all this is that action is so important, right? Just pick up the phone, just do something and keep moving forward. And, we're going to try new things, and some will work, some won't work, some will work for a time, then they'll stop working. But as long as we keep trying new things, we'll find a great way. In our business as well as in the community, right? Just keep trying. That's it. Marcia, this has been really awesome. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you. I'm going to move us on to rapid fire round of questions and wrap this up. Are you ready? I'm ready. Let's do it. Here we go. All right. Red Sox or Yankees? Oh, please. I'm from Baltimore. Orioles. Starbucks or Dunkin'? Dunkin'. Staycation or exotic destination? Staycation. Ooh. iPhone or Android? iPhone. Sports car or SUV? I drive a truck. Yeah, there we go. Do you have a favorite business book? Not the one you would expect. That's all right. Yeah, no. There's a book that was life-changing for me. It was actually called Beautiful Swimmers, and it's about the Chesapeake Bay and the Watermen and that community and that industry, and how it ties into the crab pickers and the boaters and the economies and the ups and the downs and the facings of challenges. And I read that as a required reading, young girl back in the day, and I've gone back to it many, many times because it's grounding in your business and your humanity while at the same time. Beautiful Swimmers. Yep. That's a great one. I'd love to add that to our reading list. Fantastic. If you had to do something other than be the president and CEO of Penn Globe, and it could be anything in the whole wide world, what would you do? I'd probably go and
be an art teacher for a couple of years.
There you go. It's
Probably what I
not
would
too
do.
late.
Yep.
Not too late for that.
Yep.
What's one thing that you learned, Marcia, early in your career or early in your life that you think's helped propel you to all the success that you've had?
I can only answer that by saying something along the lines of, treating people like people, never feeling that you're more important than the person that's emptying the trash can, and they know that you think they're just as important as you are.
Show people you care. I love that. What's something that you learned later in your career or later in your life, Marcia, that if you could go back and tell young Marcia and she'd listen to you, you think have a really positive impact on her life?
I would say find your voice as early as possible, and if possible, this whole idea about finding a mentor, that you don't just cover it all on your own, can really help accelerate what you feel in your heart you want to do.
Can you, the mentor thing was very great. Can you just elaborate a little bit on find your voice? I think that's an important topic. What do you mean by that?
I think a lot of people, maybe women, I don't know. I mean, I feel that they don't have the right to be heard. They haven't earned it. Maybe they're not old enough. But if you throw 10 things against the wall, as everybody knows, and there's only 2 of them stick, and find your voice and don't be afraid to put it out there. And as long as you're not in the company, and hopefully you're not working in an environment where people are making you feel less than, they'll be proud of you for throwing your voice out there into the mix.
That is awesome. Awesome
Right?
share. Marcia, thanks again so much for coming.
having me.
It's been a real pleasure.
It's been fun. Thank you.
Made in America with Ari Santiago is brought to you by Compass MSP.
Thanks for listening and spending some time with me today. My goal is to help build a strong manufacturing community, and it would be impossible to do without all of you.